Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Minister Bryson, welcome to the committee. I understand you have some opening remarks. And before you start, if you could introduce the people that are with you.
Yes, thank you.
So we will have Minister Bryson for the first hour, and then Minister Bryson will be leaving us, and we will have the Public Service Commissioner and the Treasury Board both at the table at the second hour. Minister Bryson, I hope your remarks are limited to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm delighted to be with you again at this committee. On a personal note, I spoke yesterday to Tom Lukiski. I had given him a call last week to check in, and we had a nice conversation yesterday. And he assures me that he looks forward to returning, is having a good recovery, and I know we all feel the same way, that we hope that wish him Godspeed in his recovery and look forward to seeing him back in this place. And Madam Chair, it's great to see you here today, and I'm delighted to be joined here today by Joyce Murray, our Parliamentary Secretary, Yaprak Baltajulu, the Secretary of the Treasury Board, Renee Lafontaine, the Chief Financial Officer, Marcia Santiago, the Executive Director of the Expenditure Management Sector, and Brian Pagan, who's not just the Assistant Secretary of the Expenditure Management Sector, but is President of the fan club for the Ottawa Senators. And I just didn't. You know, we have wonderful public servants in the government of Canada, and we have some really great ones at Treasury Board, but I wanted to dissuade you of any notion that they're just a bunch of boring bean counters, because they are living, breathing sports fans who feel quite passionately about other things besides budget and estimates processes. Here we are. And I'm sorry.
Come closer.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Madam Chair, I'm pleased to be here with members of the committee to discuss the 2017 and 2018 main estimates.
I had the pleasure of appearing before this committee a number of times in my role as President of the Treasury Board. And as you have commented before, I feel like an honorary member. More than that, I value the hard work that goes on here, because it's important to the sound finances of the country.
The Government of Canada tabled its 2017-2018 main estimates. These main estimates provide...
Sir, could you wait? There seems to be a translation problem. Mr. McCauley can't seem to get translation. But you're speaking English at the moment, so we are fine. Okay.
We have...
Continue.
Oh, yeah. I've always...
Okay, continue.
Okay. There we are. Was I
Fine. Continue.
Okay. Well, I apologize for the translators if my... You know, it's been said that I speak French with a Nova Scotian accent, but it's only fair because I speak English with a Nova Scotian accent as well. The main estimates provide information to support the government's request to Parliament to approve $257.9 billion in spending to deliver programs and services in the fiscal year starting April 1st, 2017. This includes $102.1 billion in planned voted expenditures and $155.8 billion in statutory expenditures. The voted expenditures include funding for the priorities outlined in Budget 2016, including more than $7 billion in new funding for infrastructure. Through these main estimates, the government continues to make important investments in the priorities of Canadians: jobs, growth, innovation, infrastructure, communities, post-secondary education. These are part of our plan to grow and strengthen Canada's middle class. Just a word, though, on the process. As you know, the main estimates reflect spending proposals that are already planned and represent up to amounts. They are required by the House of Commons standing orders to be tabled by March 1st each year. And they usually precede the Minister of Finance's budget for the same year. In fact, if you go back to 1995, 75% of the time the main budget appeared in the February-March period. Therefore, new initiatives announced in Budget 2017 are included in future estimates. Permettez-moi d'ajouter, Monsieur.
Let me add, Mr. Chair, that we appreciate that oversight of government spending is one of the most important roles parliamentarians play on behalf of their constituents. And to do that, they need access to accurate and timely information, which is what the government's vision for estimates reform is all about.
Our four-pillar plan to modernize and improve and strengthen the budget estimates process include changing the timing of the main estimates, addressing the differences in scope and accounting methods between the budget and the estimates, cash and accrual accounting and reconciliation, making it easier for MPs to connect the money we vote for with the program it's being used for in terms of program-based budgeting, and improving how governments report on the resources it uses and the results it achieves, results-based reporting. To that end, we have taken another step towards improving the reporting process with the tabling of the 2017-2018 departmental plans, which replace the previous reports on plans and priorities. Departmental plans provide details on an organization's mandate, commitments, and priorities, and provide links to related resource requirements in the main estimates. They form the baseline against which organizations track and report on their year-end performance through the departmental results reports. These were previously known as departmental performance reports. Fiscal year 2017-2018 is a year of transition in how organizations set out their performance goals for the coming year and the financial and human resources required to achieve them. Next year, the departmental plans will provide even more pertinent information on planned spending, expected outcomes, and the actual results achieved. At the same time, we're increasing and enhancing information available on TBS InfoBase. That's the searchable online database that provides financial and human resources information on government operations. While improvements take time, I'm pleased to say that we're already providing an unprecedented level of financial information and planned results on it at this point. And we plan to improve the searchability of information going forward by introducing new features. This speaks to our government's and Treasury Board's commitment to evidence-based decision-making and consistent and regular measurement of results. Continued development of simplified and effective reporting processes will better allow Parliament and Canadians to monitor the government's plans and progress on delivering real change to Canadians. Madam Chair, when it comes to departmental plans, as you know, we introduced a new Treasury Board policy on results to improve how government reports on the resources it uses and the results it achieves. Given that TBS has had three reporting structures over the 2014-15 to 2019-2020 reporting period, it's difficult to make direct comparisons on a year-to-year basis. So we have developed a reconciliation, a crosswalk, which was provided to the committee, and that helps enable parliamentarians to understand changes year over year. It does this by reviewing previous year's performance against our new departmental results framework, and this provides better year-to-year comparisons, ultimately improving transparency to Parliament. I'd like to now turn to the portion of the main estimates that apply to my department or our department specifically. Treasury Board Secretariat is seeking Parliament's authority for $6.5 billion in planned spending. That's a decrease of $28.9 million from previous main estimates. Most of this, roughly $6 billion, is for supporting government-wide expenditures for which we're responsible as the government's expenditure manager and the employer of the public service. To put it in context, for 2017-2018, TBS is forecasting expenditures of up to the following amounts: $222.9 million for our own programs, $2.4 billion for public service insurance, $3.6 billion in government-wide votes that support departments and agencies across government, and $367.2 million in statutory appropriations. Madam Chair, the Government of Canada is delivering on its commitment to Canadians in a way that is open and transparent and accountable. We will continue to strengthen the culture of results, measurement, evaluation, and innovation as we push forward to achieve greater transparency, openness, and accountability. And we also push forward with our plan to invest in Canadians and in communities to grow the economy and support the middle class. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I look forward to engaging with the committee members.
Thank you, Minister. Our first round of questioner is Monsieur Ayoub. 7 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Ayoub, you have 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously, I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens. I'm very happy for the Senators, but nevertheless, I don't know what my colleagues across the way think. But to get into the main topic, the main estimates sets out $7 billion for a new infrastructure fund. Can you please provide the committee more details on this infrastructure bank, how it will support the government's priority to invest in Canada's communities and to grow the economy? Can you give us an overview, please? First of all, you are right that one of our government's priorities is to make investments in infrastructure with an investment of $7 billion in the estimates. This reflects $1.3 billion for federal infrastructure investments in 23 organizations, including Fisheries and Oceans, National Defence, Parks Canada, the National Science and Tech Museum, the National Arts Centre Corporation, and it also includes additional investments of $3.2 billion in public transit and green infrastructure to ensure that Canadian communities are healthy, productive places to live and work. And it will help fight climate change. There are other investments, but you asked specifically about the infrastructure bank. And I am confident that it reflects the trends of other countries like Australia, England, and many countries around the world, which work and draw investments from pension funds to improve their infrastructure. In fact, Canadian pension funds are world leaders and have been for many years in their investments around the world, in infrastructure in Australia, England, in Latin America. And for many years now, Canadian pension funds have been used to improve communities elsewhere, but not here in Canada. And we think that it is logical to allow Canadian pension funds and global funds to make investments here in Canada to improve our communities in Canada. It is logical, and I am confident that when you take into account the experience of Australia and England, it was a resounding success, and I am confident in our model. And our government will continue to make public investments of public funds, as we are discussing today, in the main estimates. But at the same time, it is not sufficient for the current infrastructure needs that exist across Canada, and it makes sense to attract world pension plans. I'm going to cut you off, Mr. Minister, because I know that you're not here for us long. I have a more specific question. During the development of the budget, the effect on the GDP, in the budget currently, it is indicated that there would be a 4% impact on GDP. Is that taken into consideration in the drafting of the budget? And in your opinion, does the Treasury Board Secretary take into account these economic indicators to direct infrastructure investments? We work very closely with the Department of Finance, which is responsible with Treasury Board. It is responsible for our budgetary systems, and we take into account economic growth, particularly with the Department of Finance. But it's clear that investments in infrastructure will increase economic growth here in Canada and elsewhere. The world economy remains fragile. So it is very important to continue to make investments, significant investments in communities, and to create conditions for more economic growth and more competitiveness. I apologize to the interpreters, Madam Chair. It's clear that investments in infrastructure will improve our economic growth now and in the future. Thank you. Very quickly, 45 seconds isn't very long, but the Minister of Veterans Affairs, well, we see that there will be more money given to Veterans Affairs, and the Minister of the Department of Veterans Affairs is something that was a very sensitive issue, and we've been reproached in the past that we're not investing enough and we're not giving enough to the department, and that we don't take good care of our veterans. But I see in the budget that, on the contrary, the budget is being increased. We want to ensure that services are up to par for veterans. Can you give us some details on that quickly?
We're now going to Mr. Nader. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. It's good to be here, and I am filling in for Mr. Lukiski, but I certainly couldn't fill his role. He certainly will be missed until he returns, and we hope that will be sooner rather than later. Thank you.
I'm not doing such a bad job, is I?
You're doing a wonderful job, yes. Thank you to the Minister, to the departmental officials. I hate to start on a negative note, but there is the issue of cultural sensitivity. And there are Leafs fans, Oilers fans, Habs fans on this committee, so perhaps an update on the TV policies on culture sensitivity may be in order, but
we'll apologize and resign. I'm a Habs fan.
Habs, okay, very good. I want to start off, I had the opportunity earlier this week to sit in on the Senate Committee on National Finance, where Mr. Mendelson, the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet for Results, appeared, and certainly he spoke a fair bit about the work that you as Minister and the Treasury Board and the Secretary are undertaking to improve reporting outcomes to Canadians and to parliamentarians as well. And one of the issues I was hoping we might be able to get some information from you is on whether you could provide this committee with the Excel spreadsheet of the performance targets for the 400 or so government programs that currently exist. So specifically what we're looking for are the indicators and results for the 2015-16 and 2016-17 years for all departments, agencies, and Crown corporations. I understand that such a document exists, and was hoping you could share that through the clerk with the committee.
Thank you very much, and that's not a negative note at all, because it's actually a very positive note, because we launched the policy that Mr. Mendelson was referring to. Our results policy was launched last July. What we are doing is quite different. In the past, there was reporting, but it wasn't necessarily the clearest reporting in terms of being reporting that was pertinent, useful, and clearly reflecting what departments and agencies were doing and what the results were. So what our new reporting, Mr. Nader, are focused on three things. One is departments and agencies through their results, their DRFs, the results, delivering results frameworks, clearly indicating what they do. Which is important, because to understand clearly what they're doing. Secondly, why they're doing it, and thirdly, what are the results. And we also want to move not just to engaging and providing information to you, but also to Canadian citizens. That's where we're moving.
And that's great. But could we get that spreadsheet shared with the committee? Could we get that spreadsheet with the 400 government programs shared with the committee?
We we are, in terms of the broader policy, we're moving forward with unprecedented reportage to Parliament, not just information, but useful information, usable information.
No, I understand that, but specifically, could we get that spreadsheet shared with the committee?
We had. And actually, Brian may have something to add to that.
Well, thank you, Mr. and thank you for the question. As the ministers mentioned, under the new results policy, departments are now providing us with the indicators, the results expectations for their program activities, their departmental results frameworks. Those have been compiled individually by departments, provided to us. We have loaded those in our online reporting tool called TBS Infobase. So it's available to the committee, to Canadians, to be able to access indicators by department or for the whole of government. It will take some time for us to turn that back into an Excel spreadsheet, but we can do that and report back. But it is available to you online, so through TBS Infobase.
Okay. I think we may be on different pages here, but perhaps I understand there is currently an Excel spreadsheet. I see the secretary is nodding.
Well, I think that you're asking for the whole results of the departmental results framework. The departments have until next November to prepare them. They're not fully complete.
Okay, no, I'm looking at 2015, 16, 16, 17 years for the indicators and results for those years. I'm told that such a document does exist.
But again, and glad to have the conversation with Mr. Nader, but the new results policy was introduced about a little less than a year ago. But in terms of the previous years, we'll provide you with what information we can.
Okay, we'd appreciate that.
With what information we can.
Perhaps within 2 weeks or so, we'd like to follow up at that point.
Let's actually clearly identify, make sure we're what you need.
Is
we
it
can
for
follow up on
15-16 or for 17-18?
15, 16, and 16, 17.
The indicators or the actual results?
The indicators and results.
Okay.
Yeah. Which would have been the previous governments. Some of that would have been under the previous regime's framework.
Certainly. Okay, moving on then. I want to talk a little bit about performance targets. Is there a policy that you could share with the committee on how those are established? I'm sure it's evidence-based. Could you share a little bit of that, how you establish performance targets?
Each department is developing now indicators, which are some of which are qualitative, but most of which the objective is to quantify with indicators an ability to actually measure what the objectives are, but what the results are. there's in the U.S. under the Obama administration, if you go to there's a website, performance.gov. I am very inspired by that kind of public reportage. The UK has done this as well, and it is our desire to actually do more public reportage, that not just parliamentarians. But
so is there a policy framework in place now that helps?
Yes, in fact, what I'd like to do sometime, and if you'd like, Madam Chair and committee members, is come back and talk about the results policy, which I think that's something that's probably overdue. We've had some overviews of it, but come back and actually go through the results policy sometime, because it is something that intends on driving better results and more public reporting.
Perhaps in the meantime, could you maybe elaborate on what happens when a program fails to meet a performance target? What's undertaken by Treasury Board or by the Secretariat?
Well, one, we work very closely.
Actually run out of time.
Sorry,
but he can answer the question in this, to the other questions when they come.
But if I may, Madam
Yes.
Chair, I'd like to sometime come back and talk about this, because it's something that's important, I think, to all members of Parliament and to Canadians. And the objective here, and what I see is, in terms of public reporting, I want, if a department and agency has these objectives, and if they're falling short, I actually think there's merit to, and you'll see this with the UK and the US models, where there's a public reportage of that.
Thank you. We go to a 7-minute round for Mr. Weir.
Thank you, and thank you for being here, Minister Bryson. As you know, there are still tens of thousands of federal employees who have pay problems and now tax problems as a result of the Phoenix pay boondoggle. You and other cabinet ministers have formed a task force to try to finally fix Phoenix. I'm wondering, how many times has that task force met?
We have, and thank you very much for the question. The Phoenix pay system issue is one with which we are seized as a government. It is one that engages in every department and agency. The genesis of it, when the implementation of the Phoenix pay system occurred, there was a letting go of about 700
No, sir, with respect, Minister Bryson, I'm just trying to find out how many times this task force has met.
I think
you're on it.
In the past, I think we've met and had meetings and or calls, I believe, 4 times in the last period.
Now, part of this,
we're just having discussions as cabinet members of that committee on an ongoing basis. What's really important from this terrible situation to realize is to learn in terms of future. When you're implementing an enterprise-wide IT solution, you ought to maintain the legacy system during that period until the new system is working well. And there was...
So why didn't your government do that? I mean, there were all sorts of problems with phase 1 of Phoenix, and you plowed ahead with phase 2.
The previous government actually laid off 700 pay professionals to try to save $70 million to contribute to an illusory surplus on the eve of the election. I can tell you that when we get this fixed, it will cost more.
Criticism of the previous government. Given that the previous government made that bad decision, why did your government go ahead with the implementation of Phoenix?
Well, in fact, the previous government did actually lay off those people, and
Indeed.
Put us in a situation where we needed a pay system, but they had, for all intents and purposes, on a human resource perspective, had really gutted the previous legacy system that was important. In terms of what we are doing, and this is being, in fact, your minister from Saskatchewan,
my neighbor MP, yes.
Your neighbor MP, Ralph Goodale, is chairman of that committee. We are working closely with him. Treasury Board is working closely with him, but all other ministers. We are working closely with the unions representing the public service.
Of these cabinet ministers, who's going to ultimately be accountable for Phoenix?
We are the government, and we take our responsibility seriously to fixing this. And
if by some point in the future Phoenix is still a mess, all 6 of you are going to resign?
We are committed to fixing Phoenix, Mr. Weir, and we are in good faith working very hard and exhausting all options to fix what is a very complex and difficult challenge operationally. I can tell you, Mr. Weir, if it were simple, it would have been fixed by now.
Okay.
It's not. It's a big problem. It's one to which we are absolutely committed. We have a moral responsibility to pay our public servants on time and accurately.
I completely agree. In trying to address this big problem, your task force is going to spend up to $140 million. And I'm wondering if you could tell us how that figure was arrived at.
It's going to take significant investments, not only on the there are investments obviously in IT and systems, but the inputting and management of that data and the people required to do that. We have increased resources through satellite offices. We've increased resources at Miramichi. We have increased resources in departments and agencies.
So can you provide a breakdown of the $140 million between those different uses?
Well, in fact, and there will be more investments to doing this, but I can tell you that the investments reflect both the human resource and the IT challenges. But I want to come back, Mr. Weir, where you and I are on the same page is there is an absolute commitment to fixing this. And this is one that our Prime Minister shares.
Is there a commitment to providing a breakdown of this $140 million? Is that something you can provide to this committee? Is that something you're prepared to provide to the committee, a breakdown of this $140 million? I mean, it strikes me the government's saying Phoenix was supposed to save $70 million a year, and that's only going to use up 2 years of savings. But I hope there's some methodology that's more convincing than just multiplying $70 million by 2.
Well, I can assure you that we are making the kinds of strategic investments that we believe will help fix this. But it is very clear from the outside looking at Phoenix and the situation, it may look simple to you.
I think it's a very complicated problem, and that's why I'm asking about it, and in particular wondering if you're going to be able to come back to the committee with a breakdown of how this $140 million figure was calculated.
Well, first of all, in terms of the investments we're making, we will invest, we will continue to invest, and we will get this done.
Okay.
But it has been, from a public policy and an operational perspective, a huge challenge.
I appreciate you might not have the numbers off the top of your head. That's fair enough. I'm just wondering, and I think this is essentially a yes or no question, whether you can come back and in the next couple of weeks give us a breakdown of that $140 million figure.
In fact, most of this money, PSPC as a department, is seized with this as one single department. That's where the Phoenix pay system rests. Treasury Board, we are the employer, but PSPC operates the pay system. We work closely with them, and we view our responsibility as the employer as being very serious to work closely with them and to fix this. But the actual operations of the Phoenix pay system, the specific operations of Phoenix, rest in Treasury, or rather in
Thank you,
PSPC.
Minister. We now go to 7 minutes. Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Merci. Bonjour, Monsieur.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. Minister. It's always a pleasure to welcome you here at the committee. You know that I also sit on public accounts, and we are awaiting with impatient. We are the Auditor General's report, and in my writing, it's surprising the number of people. Well, we're not a place where we have a lot of federal employees, but the number of people who have said to me that they were laid off, and they were called back to work on this issue. So I know that it's all hands on deck to manage the Phoenix pay issue. The question that I have is the following. It's also something that concerns my constituents, and it's with respect to the family allocation, the Canadian Child Benefit. And I would noted that the main estimates reflect a change of spending, forecasted spending, the reduction of the universal childcare benefit, because our government replaced it with the child benefit to give more money to families who need it. That's really the difference between the tax measure and statutory measures. So I would like you to explain this change, discussing the way that we can better explain to parliamentarians how this change in statutory spending can be compared to tax measures that implement the Canada Child Benefit. Thank you very much, Brenda, and I greatly appreciate your question. The universal child care benefit was delivered under transfer payments, which are included in the main estimates. However, the Canada Child Benefit is offered through the tax system. Tax spending is not included in the estimates. The main estimates, tabled in May after the budget, would include the conciliation chart between forecasted spending in the 2017-2018 estimates with the forecast presented in the 2017 budget.
Because of the Canada Child Benefit, the new program is delivered through the tax system, and it's a progressive measure that is phased out as a family income goes up, whereas the previous universal was delivered through spending or program spending. So as a result of that, they were accounted for differently, and there is a confusion here that would be more easily explained if the main estimates followed the budget, and there could be a reconciliation of those two. Rest assured, the actual, in fact, I believe it's 20. There's a significant delta. The Canada Child Benefit is a significantly higher value. It's actually 23 billion. And again, as a progressive measure, it means that, just as an example, a single parent making $30,000 per year with one child would be $6,000 better off tax-free over the previous system. But again, one of the measures, the universal, was accounted for differently in terms of spending versus the tax-based approach of the Canada Child Benefit, a progressive tax-based approach.
Thank you for that, Minister, and I can certainly attest to the comments that I've had from citizens in my riding, just appreciating that they didn't get any nasty surprises at tax time, that the money that they got in their bank account, they get to keep for their families. So continuing on that theme, just around the difference between statutory and other types of spending, in 2017-2018, Treasury Report is anticipating a $103 million decrease in its statutory forecast from the amount presented the year previous, and this decrease is due mainly to an adjustment to the employer contributions made under the Public Service Superannuation Act and other retirement legislation and the Employment Insurance Act. So could you or a member of your team talk to us about what are the legislative amendments behind this decrease in statutory expenditures, and what percentage of this forecasted decrease is due to an adjustment to the employer contributions? Just talk to us a little bit about that.
I'm going to ask Renee to answer that specific question. Okay. It's in her wheelhouse.
All right, excellent.
So thanks very much for the question. So in terms of the statutory payments that are made each year to make sure the public service pension plan is financially sound. So there's really two types of inputs that go in: what the employees contribute through their paychecks and what the employer pays in terms of their fair share of the service costs to maintain the pension plan. But in addition to that, we get actuary reports every couple of years and there are we have to, according to Section 6 of the Public Pension Reporting Act, those actuarial reports have to come to us. And once in a while, well, right now, our pension plan from a financial sustainability perspective is in a bit of a deficit, and we have been paying over years these lump sum annual payments to the deficit. So what has happened is the last actuarial report that was provided to us, and it was tabled in Parliament actually on January 25th in 2016, actually said that we've been doing well in paying down these actuarial deficits, and they've actually reduced the amount that we have to pay by $103 million a year. And that's the explanation.
Thank you very much. We now go to the 5-minute round. Monsieur Clark.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems that in the Phoenix fiasco, we're hearing new excuses every month. And if half of the time and energy devoted on blaming the previous government had been used to finding quick, sustainable solutions, perhaps we would no longer be talking about it. I would like to share with the colleagues that the internal SI system report released in January 2016, an internal report at Public Services and Procurement, like the reports that you ordered, like the Garner report in February. But the report SI Systems stated that all the necessary employees in Miramichi and in other compensation departments, and the real issue were the backlogs that you didn't wish to recognize before the month of March, April. And now that we have a good idea of the scope of the issue, we know that the backlog is part of the problem, and your government for a few months now has found a new excuse about the former Conservative government laying off 700 people. And I would like Ms. Shannon to hear this. Could you confirm, Mr. Minister, with all due respect to your Liberal governments, that your government laid off 250 people between February 2016 and February 2017? Thank you for the question. Once again, it was the last government that was responsible for laying off 700 people. The professionals who were responsible for compensation in the public system. It was a bad decision to do so. And it created the situation for our government where we lacked the human resources during the implementation of this system. And allow me to reassure you that for us, it is a priority to take care of this issue. It is our responsibility as current government to do so. We are assuming our responsibilities in a serious fashion. We are going to take care of the problem, and we will take care of the problem with PSPC and all other involved departments, and with our Ministers' Working Group. allow me to reassure you that it is our responsibility now as a government to take care of this problem, and we will do so.
I want to make clear, I'll make an interesting parallel. You certainly remember the election of 1984 when Turner said to Mulroney, I had no choice to confirm those nominations. And Mulroney told him, and that's when he won the election, he said, yes, sir, you had the choice. And I know you know perfectly what I'm talking about.
I was hardly born.
I wasn't born. But Minister, what I'm getting to here is that the process of firing 700 people was perhaps started by us, okay? But the 250 people that were fired between February and April are part of those 700 people, and your government should have stopped that, just like Harper, after the election, said, okay, we'll postpone the firing of those 250 people, and we'll postpone the launching of the system because it's not ready, and we need those experts in. And your government, at the same time of launching the Phoenix system, you decided to fire those 250 people. So their problems is on your back and not on ours. And that's the reality. Canadians need to understand that. So when you say that, because it's your third excuse in a year, when you say that the problem is caused by a lack of structural, the lack of employees, you fired 250 people, and you should at least confirm that to your colleagues.
Let's be very clear that not maintaining a legacy system and the removal of 700 pay experts was a mistake of the previous government that enfeebled the implementation and of the new system. But let's also be clear that we have done, and in fact, even as late as Monday of this week, we've continued across the public service. We are appealing to current and past public servants with pay experience, the pertinent experience we need so that they can show up and they can help right now. We're appealing to people to come in for overtime and work to help address this, and past public servants. This situation is one that our Prime Minister and our government consider to be our responsibility to fix. We're the government, and we are working to fix this. This is a terrible situation.
Thank you, Minister.
And it's one I can tell you that going forward, it will have a huge impact on how our government, and I believe future governments, consider any IT, enterprise-wide IT implementation. And
thank you, Minister. No, your time is up. 5 minutes for Mr. Peterson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here. And Mr. Clark alluded to the 1984 election. My guess is you were probably cheering for Mr. Mulroney in that election, but we won't hold that against you. Back when the Conservatives were a progressive Conservative party, I know Mr. Bryson was a proud member of that
I might have
party.
even been putting in lawn signs. And,
But in any event, I want to just sort of continue on the Phoenix and let you elaborate on the points you were trying to make. My friend, Mr. Weir, I think, didn't realize you were answering some of the questions because he kept asking them as if you weren't speaking. So I want to give you a chance, and maybe just a chance so we can have your answers on the transcript, because I know it's hard for the great people that are working making these transcripts to actually record two people speaking at once. It's almost impossible. So if you can elaborate on some of the answers you were trying to give at that point, it would be great, just so we can get them on the record.
Well, I've been a member of these committees over a period of, it's almost 20 years since I was first elected in June 2nd of 1997, so I know parliamentary committees well and have great respect for the work they do. We as a government take our responsibility, and our responsibility to fix Phoenix. This is an unacceptable situation, and this is one that, as a minister, I have been engaged in. This is my second time, but I have dealt with intractable and challenging issues as a minister. My previous department was Public Works, the predecessor to Public Services and Procurement Canada when I was in Paul Martin's cabinet. This is one of the most complicated and challenging operational problems I have seen. The pay system for the Government of Canada, by the way, is the biggest pay system in Canada. And for instance, So any company that does something similar, no one would have had the same scale, which is important to realize. But beyond that, the approach to it, and I'm not, we take our responsibility to fix this. The approach to it, you need to have the human resources, you need to maintain the legacy systems when you're implementing a new IT system. We are working closely. In fact, YAPRAC is helping chair a working group with the public service unions on this that meets regularly. We are working with public servants. We are appealing to public servants because we need more people. We need more people with pay expertise to help us on this, because there is a human resource issue. So we, as late as, even this week, we'd sent out another appeal, and we want to get some of the people. In fact, we've appealed to the people working with PSAC and PIPS, and the unions representing public servants. We've reached out to their members and their retirees to get what we need. And it's taking and will take more financial resources to fix, far more than the money saved, by laying off people prior to the implementation. And we need to make those investments. But let me be very clear. This is one of the, operationally, is one of the toughest challenges I have seen in both my private sector and government experience. I may ask YAPRAC if she has anything to add on that as a public servant who's been around almost as long as Ralph Goodale.
Long time.
Well, I meant that positively. I like Ralph too.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
30 seconds.
Just
Quick question, no answer.
I just wanted, the question's too long to fit in the 30 seconds, but I just do want to thank you as minister and your department and the staff who are here for the commitment to solving this problem that we're all members around this committee, I think, at the essence, just want the problem solved. So thank you for your commitment to that.
Thank you very much.
And while you commended YAPRAC, congratulations for achieving the award. You forgot to say to her that she achieved the award of Public Service
Public Policy
Award. Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah, she has done a fantastic job.
If I may, I have had the privilege of working with some exceptional public servants, and I do on a daily basis in Treasury Board. And YAPRAC's story, someone who comes here from Turkey at the age of 22, and becomes a student in Canada, and serves this country as a public servant, speaks not just to the excellence of our public service, but the importance of new Canadians in shaping a better Canada. And her speech that she gave in Toronto a few weeks ago is one I would commend to all members as one that really does reflect the passion for Canada that the people who choose Canada as their country bring to this country. And as nation builders, as modern day nation builders, their contribution is something that I thought was summed up in a very poignant way by YAPRAC at that time. So
thank you. Mr. McCauley for 5 minutes.
Hi, welcome back. First of all, Mr. Bryson, there's an old saying about never asking a lady her age, and I think you may have partially violated that by comparing her age to Mr. Goodale's length of service. So please be more careful.
We believe in equality.
Yes. Very, very quickly, Mr. Ware asked a question, but I want to ask very succinctly, the committee headed by Mr. Goodale, how many meetings have they had? And please no preamble, just a number, please.
The discussions, there's been meetings and calls.
No, of Mr. Goodale's one that he's chairing, how many meetings have they had? We've heard it's 0.
No, that would
Okay.
that would be.
Let's move on.
I
know we've got a lot of estimates. I know there's a lot of estimates.
That would be.
Okay.
That would
Thank
be.
you. I want to move on to my next question.
May I
please.
be on the record?
With the Phoenix
No,
issue.
may I? Because you put something out
Just
there.
tell me a number, please.
That is patently false. What
Okay,
you
that's
said.
fine. Just tell us the number,
We
please.
have met repeatedly,
Thank
and
you.
we have had repeatedly met and had calls on this issue, and we are seized with it. But the number
Perfect.
you said, and I don't want that to rest because it
You've
is
said that.
patently
You're
false.
using up my time, Mr. Bryson. I know you love to talk over it, but let's get back to this, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to stick with Phoenix for a bit. A couple issues. I want to point out when Mr. Clark talked about the layoffs. February, we were sitting actually in committee February 19 with yourself, and your department said it was a stunning success. At the same time, February 19, yes, 2016. Your department commented it was a stunning success. About a month later, Ms. Foote said it was, again, a stunning success, a testament of government operations. At the same time, your government was laying off those people. Mr. Ware, I do recall and myself asking your government very specifically about keeping the legacy program going. And again, your official said, not possible, not possible, not possible. So I just want to get that on the record. I realize it's a big issue and people are working very hard on it, but I have been digging through this for many, many months, a year and a half now. ATIP after ATIP after ATIP, every report shown it was very clearly a big problem. But as Mr. Clark said, your government could have said no. And when they did say no, when we first brought the issues up, it was all blamed on the backlog, which your government was warned about and chose to ignore. But they still continue to ignore the problem, even up until July when we called a special committee. Your government fought that special committee until the media got a hold of it. And that's the only reason we got your government to actually act on all this Phoenix issues. And that goes back to July. Let me finish. Your government ignored the problem after problem. We have document after document refuting every single one of your government's excuses all along. And that's what we told Ms. Foote when she was here. If she spent half her time, she does blaming others for this, that she spent fixing it, we wouldn't be in this issue. Government blamed, we didn't know about the backlog. But we have documents show November to her, clear the backlog, which she ignored. We were told later, your government, there was no training. We found results saying, finish the training, which you ignored. We found documents from every single one of your chief financial officers in November in a briefing note to Minister Foote saying, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. The response from your government was, we'll report back in a month. December 15th, these internal documents, which we had to fight to get, come out very clearly, 35% failure rate with Phoenix, and you still went ahead. So it's a big problem, and I recognize a lot of people working on it. I don't blame you specifically, but it's a big problem, but it does rest with your government. The issue about looking for all these pay workers, Ms. LeMay was here 2 weeks ago. We've been looking for an entire year. We've spent this week looking through all the job postings, and you talked about, we've just started looking again. We found no job postings. So you've contradicted what Ms. LeMay said. So she said, every week we've been looking for an entire year to try and rehire these people we laid off. Now we're just very recently you started looking for these people. So I just want to put that on the record that this Phoenix, and I'm not blaming you specifically, but I do point my finger at Minister Foote, and I do point it at Ms. LeMay for ignoring the problem, ignoring the backlog, letting it snowball out of control. And by the time they finally chose to address the backlog, which was probably about July or August, maybe May they started, it was too late, and that's where the problem lies, period. I just want to get
Sorry, you overspoke. I mean, I was watching. We now go to...
I certainly want to take exception with what Mr. Colley has just laid
I have to recognize you, Mr. Whalen, for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I certainly want to take some exception with what Mr. McCauley just said. We've sat in these meetings, and Madame Ratansi and I, the chair and I, had an opportunity this morning to attend a session with the Telfer School of Business on complex project management and cultural issues associated with that. If we look at a document that I'm going to table, it's a report from Bridget Fortin and Rosanna DiPaolo, who are advising the minister. This is back from February 18th, around the time of the pilot project. It says, where are we on technology? Ready to go. Where are we on process? Ready to go. Where are we on people? Ready to go. Independent third-party review. Also says that on the basis of the evidence provided, the review team feels that the TPA initiative should proceed to the next phase. In all the high-level advice provided by the ministerial staff to the minister and the department staff to the minister indicated that the project was ready to go. And the testimony that we've heard to date seems to indicate that there's some type of a cultural failing within the system whereby a number of people were let go in departments 2 days before the election. There was the authority granted to the departments to let go their pay advisors that extended throughout this period, and the advice that was being given to the minister appears to have been patently false. Now, we're not sure what the incentives were to encourage the bad behavior, but it's a cultural problem that we want to address and avoid so we can move forward and solve the problems that not only are currently plaguing Phoenix, but which also may plague some of the other systems that were put, some of the other consolidation measures that were put in by the previous government. When I look at Shared Services Canada, and these are some of the questions I want to ask about, Minister, you've identified in your departmental plans, or your department has identified limited IT capacity as a major risk. In October, your department tabled a strategic plan for IT services for 2016 to 2020. When I asked Mr. Parker about that plan, he didn't even know the name of it in the last meeting. And so there seems to be some disconnect in terms of the level of risk that people around this table see regarding IT consolidation, the level of risk that your department clearly sees, and the department which is meant to deliver on the very plans that are put in place. Can you speak to us a bit on extra staffing and extra spending that might be required to manage, again, the systems that are in place, the legacy systems, in addition to the transformation initiatives which were clearly not properly financed under the previous government, but I think it's been identified as that's been a real problem umpteen times by this committee. So what additional resources are being put into the information technology side to manage the systems, but to separately fund the changes which are required so we can avoid more problems like Phoenix?
Thank you very much, Nick. The underfunding of IT investment in governments in Canada has gone on for a long time, and we have very creaky IT systems right across government. Some departments using COBOL-based systems, some using creaky old mainframe systems. An inability to share information between departments. Part of it is technological. Some of it has to do with other things in terms of legislative and statutory changes that would have to occur. But this is not unique to Canada. This is not unique to the Canadian governments, but it has to be fixed, and we have to make the kinds of investments and implement the kind of digital reforms that other countries have undertaken. Probably one of the worst government IT failures anywhere in any government was when Obamacare was implemented in the U.S. On the healthcare.gov website. On that day, 4.7 million Americans tried to register for healthcare. 4.7 million. Only six citizens succeeded. But the Obama administration looked at that as a call for action, and it created a reprioritization of IT for that government, and they created, among other things, a government digital services unit and 18F. And one of the things we're doing as a government, we're establishing, it was in the budget, a Canadian Digital Service Unit. It is being modeled after some of what was done in the U.S. and also the UK government digital services and the Australia government digital services. The reality is everything has changed in the last 10 years in terms of digital service delivery. And the Canadian government, we are, to a certain extent, we're Blockbuster in a Netflix world, and Canadian citizens want to and wonder why they can't receive the same quality of digital services from their government that they can get from Amazon. We have identified what the barriers to doing that are, and rest assured, I want to one by one tackle those challenges and And the Auditor General, I must say, in his last couple of few reports, has talked about government service delivery and the importance of that. Governments tend to focus 90% of their efforts on policy and 10% on execution.
Thank you.
And we've got to actually focus more on execution and good service delivery. And that's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require resources. But you're talking about a subject that I feel have a great deal of passion and interest in.
Mr. Weir for 3 minutes, and that's the last round.
Thank you. Now, I think we've heard two different narratives about Phoenix from Minister Bryson and Mr. Whalen. I believe, Mr. Bryson, you've suggested to the committee that all the bad decisions were made by the former Conservative government, including not maintaining the legacy payroll system, which is interesting because when Minister Foote was here previously, she and her officials told us that they got rid of the legacy system because there was no way to maintain it, whereas Mr. Whalen has suggested that the Liberal government, in fact, made some mistakes because it was getting bad advice from departmental officials. So I just want to clarify, Mr. Bryson, whether the story is that all the bad decisions were made by the previous Conservative government on Phoenix, or whether the story is that your government made some mistakes, but it made them because it was getting bad advice from officials.
Mr. Weir, we have an excellent public service in the Government of Canada, and they provide advice to ministers. Fearless advice and then loyal implementation. You may feel comfortable in throwing public service members under the bus.
Well, no, I don't. It seemed that Mr. Whalen did, though.
That may be your practice. It certainly doesn't reflect what I view as a tradition of the New Democrats defending public servants and workers. But as a minister, and particularly as the employer of the public service, I'm not going to sit here and throw public servants under the bus. I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility as a minister to do my utmost, and I am driven by advice provided by public servants. The decisions taken by ministers ultimately are their decisions, and the advice provided by public servants is the best possible advice they can provide and they try to provide. But it might be. It's easy sometimes to throw groups like the public service under the bus, but governing isn't easy, Mr. Weir.
And so I'm glad you're not doing that, and I'd just like to clarify that your government will take responsibility for implementing Phase 2 of Phoenix and getting rid of the legacy system.
The narrative of your question, you want me to blame the public service for this?
No, I don't want you to. I want you to take responsibility for your government's decision to have implemented Phase 2 of Phoenix and got rid of the legacy payroll system, which you now acknowledge was a mistake.
Mr. Weir,
I take
you've
responsibility
run out of time.
for fixing
Either you
this.
allow the minister to answer or give your questions, but you've run out of time.
Okay, thank
you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. We will suspend for a couple of minutes, and then we'll invite the other witnesses from the Public Service Commission to come and join us on the table. We don't have much time, and I will need 10 minutes to do some committee business. So please take your seat, and we will start off with.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Mr. Borbet will do the statement.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Borbet has been kind enough to say that he will cut short his remarks because you already have the speech in front, so he will highlight. And congratulations, Mr. Borbet, for your appointment.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's a pleasure to be here to appear before the committee to talk about our main estimates, notre budget principal ainsi que le plan ministériel de la Commission.
The main estimates, as well as the departmental plan. Here with us, we have Mr. Tim Petitpas, who is acting main vice chair, and Mr. Philip Morton. Mr. Philip Morton, who is Chief Financial Officer and Acting Vice President of Corporate Affairs. I would like to thank the committee.
As you know, my appointment was confirmed and effective yesterday, so this is my second day on the job, so I'm very pleased to be back here.
Welcome.
Thank you. As the chair has indicated, I have already provided my remarks to you. You have them in front of you, so I will actually not address them to save time because I know you're short of time on questions. Alors, j'aimerais simplement peut-être juste vous.
I would simply like to remind you a bit of the Commission's main estimates.
In planned spending for the current and next fiscal year, the majority of the organization's spending is on salaries. We have approximately 800 full-time equivalents who work both in the National Capital Region as well as in regional offices across the country. Our people continue to be our most important resource as we deliver on our priorities to promote and safeguard a merit-based, representative, and non-partisan public service that serves all Canadians on behalf of Parliament. I have talked in my written remarks. You will see that I addressed some of the priorities that I had started talking about earlier when I appeared about a month ago, and I would be certainly pleased to further expand on those as we take questions. Nous serons heureux de prendre vos questions. Alors, je vous remercie.
We would be happy to take your questions. I thank you.
We go with the first round of questions. Mr. Peterson, for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and welcome, Mr. Borbet, and congratulations on your new role. I appreciate the fact you're only a few hours into it. And I'm going to ask some questions that I think are more general in nature than necessarily having to do with the dollar figures, but just some of the priorities of your department, some of the stuff you alluded to when you were before us about a month ago, just by way of follow-up and maybe a way of you to elaborate and expand. I know in your opening statement that you provided, you mentioned some priorities, of course, independently safeguarding merit and nonpartisanship, building a public service that is representative of Canada's diversity, and just the flexibility for managers to achieve results for Canadians and ensuring fair and transparent employment practices. These are all important, I think, undertakings, but they're also very large undertaking. So I want you to maybe to expand a little bit, and I know we probably don't have time in my 7 minutes to give a full expansion, but maybe what sort of steps do you think we can take to make sure the public service is representative of Canada's diversity? Maybe that's something you can start off in, and then I want to, if you have time, to elaborate a little bit on maintaining the nonpartisanship of the public service and what steps, what gaps there may be now, and how you expect to fill some of those gaps in your mandate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I'll address nonpartisanship and I'll come back to diversity. So on nonpartisanship, I guess there is a very strong tradition within the public service of Canada, but we also recognize that public servants have rights to engage in political activities, and so we have to find the balance between them exercising that right and under what conditions they can versus maintaining that nonpartisanship, a nonpartisan nature, and the confidence of the public that decisions that are made in the public service are not based on political considerations. So finding that balance is tricky, and from time to time we will end up with situations where we have to investigate and have to actually take action. So that is a responsibility we take very seriously. I think the other aspect is, I talked a little bit about before, is the need to make sure that public servants across the country understand those responsibilities. And for somebody like me who's been in the public service for many years, perhaps I have it ingrained in me, but for new public servants who perhaps have a very different perspective about engagement and get involved in political activities and, you know, with social media and, as you know, the ability to be able to get involved in political or semi-political causes in an instant, I think we need to sensitize our new public servants to the risks and how to manage those responsibilities. So that's certainly something that we'll look at. I looked at some survey results that indicated, and you'll see in our departmental report, we're meeting our target for 75% of public servants surveyed indicate that they're familiar with their responsibilities in this area. But when you look at the age bracket, then it's more than 80% amongst the baby boomers like myself, and it's much lower amongst the new public servants. So we have work to do there. On diversity, I think there are many different ways, many tools that we can use to improve diversity. I'm really thrilled with the pilot that we are leading on name-blind recruitment, and to see how that is a way to reduce some of the barriers. I'm really looking forward to seeing how on the accessibility file that we will be able to, as a government, as an employer, I talk about a vanguard employer in the area of accessibility. In other words, not just meeting basic accommodation requirements, but actually taking measures that will actually go and find the talent that I think we're not tapping into, particularly with persons with disability, but I think we can say the same thing for other equity groups. I also looked at the statistics, and I have to say we also have to acknowledge that the public service has done a pretty good job over the last number of years. The statistics show that we have improved. There are still some gaps. There's some areas that we need to invest and put some attention and look at pilot projects, working on very specific inventories. For example, there's an inventory that was created for Aboriginal candidates, and then how can we use that to be able to improve our performance in that area. So I think there are a lot of different tools that at the Public Service Commission, and I know we have a very, very creative team there that is certainly looking at all the different ways that we can improve on diversity.
Thank you. 2 minutes. Great. I wanted to also, if you could elaborate a little bit on what I think can be referred to as ongoing professional development in the public service, and you can elaborate on your commitment to that and how you see, perhaps maybe you can indicate if you consider it important, and if so, how are you going to implement a program?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a very important question, and I think sometimes we are very focused on how do we get people into our organizations, how do we recruit, and you know, that's great, but how do we keep them, how do we retain them? And that is quite often through the richness of the conditions that we provide in the workplace and the investment in professional development. So I think the Public Service Commission has a role to play there, but we need to work with the employer and others and individual departments to see how we can create conditions under which people can come into the public service and then see how there will be investments in their capacity. They will gain the experience to be able to grow and move up into the organization. And so there are professional development programs, for example, that help bring somebody at the starting level, at the entry level, and over a period of years grow them to what we might call the intermediate level. And so those are programs that can actually make a big difference in terms of retaining the talent that we work so hard to go and recruit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We go for 7 minutes, Mr. Macaulay.
Great. Welcome back, Mr. Borbe. Congratulations on day 2, and thank you for not wearing a Senator's jersey and being more culturally sensitive to us Oilers fans. You mentioned about the good work the public service is doing, and you know, I congratulate your department, the previous administration, and the current administration as well on you know, balance within the public service. Page 26 of the departmental plan, I quote from, says the public service is surpassing workforce availability in all 4 employment equity groups, which is fantastic, and I congratulate you on that. It says 3 of the 4 groups, women, visible minorities, and Aboriginal people, are underrepresented at the executive level. Not right now, but can you provide us with currently where we're at and what the goals are for those groups. I'd like to see how close we are, but not right now. Page 29, though, shows departmental resource or result indicators for percentage of executive employees compared to workforce who are persons with a disability. Last year was 5.3%, but it says the target's 2.3% ongoing. I can't imagine we're targeting to reduce the amount. So maybe we could just have a look at that and get back to us later.
Let me start, and then I'll turn to my
just
colleague
very briefly, because I've got other questions.
Okay. So in terms of equity groups in the executive category, again, we can provide that information, but we actually have reduced the gaps, particularly for women. There are still some gaps.
As I'm saying, the
we'll
service is doing a very
those
good job, so I want to say congratulations. But if we can just get those numbers. Mr. Pagan, I just want to get to you one of the items in, and I'll refer to the page, is page 24 when it says the very first line, percentage of departments that have assessed all internal controls over financial reporting in high-risk areas and annually realign, implement, and monitor systems on internal control. Now, Mr. Bryson started out at the beginning talking about how oversight and oversight and spending is, what your department does. Page 1, it talks about improving financial oversight and quality of the information we rely on. But your target is to have 10% of all government departments not fulfilling internal controls. Does that strike you as wrong or appropriate? That only 90% of all of our government departments would be have accessed all of their internal controls over financial reporting of high-risk areas?
Mr. McCauley, thank you for the question. Just to be clear, the target is 90% of departments will review their internal controls, and you're questioning whether that's adequate?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not just 90%, but it's 10% of all government controls. Government's 44% of our spending GDP, and we're saying 10% not doing this is acceptable?
Right. Thank you for the question. This is a plan for fiscal years, where are we, 17, 18, and the Office of the Comptroller General works with departments to review the planning framework and the control framework on a regular basis. And so I imagine, and I would confirm this with the Comptroller General, but in this fiscal year, they would be looking at 90% of the 130 departments.
So
the idea of doing that,
it's perfectly fine to have 13 departments not controlling, or not having proper internal controls by next year. Not right now, but a year from now, 10%. We're saying is our goal to have 10%.
There's recently been changes to the policy suite, and so departments are introducing new entity level controls around IT, which President Bryson spoke about, business processes, and they have a timeline to be able to implement that.
Okay.
And,
I'm going to move on because we have short time. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think 10% is acceptable. I would think in a year from now it should be 100%, but that's for yourself and Mr. Bryson. I want to get back. Mr. Bryson talked about the infrastructure and the estimates. PBO mentioned, there's $7 billion of infrastructure. $2.5 billion is missing from the estimates. Mr. Bryson today talked about $7 billion in infrastructure spending, and then talked about $4.5 billion of it. Where's that $2.5 billion?
Thank you.
And the reason I ask that, the Senate came out with a report on the government's infrastructure spending. It says, they said there's no strategic plan for the infrastructure and no measure of success for the spending apart from dollars spent. And again, it goes back to, the whole point of your department being, which is, financial oversight. And again, in the President's message, main priorities, improving financial oversight and the quality of the information we rely on. Now, the Senate was quite critical that, again, we hear again and again historic infrastructure spending. In the estimates, there's $2.5 billion that the PBO can't find, and he's a lot better at this stuff than I am. I can't find it. He can't find it. The Senate says there's no plan, strategic plan, and no measure of success for $7 billion of taxpayers' money apart from saying we spent the money.
Okay, so thank you. Two questions there. First, on the PBO report of the main estimates. We agree with the PBO that information presented in the main estimates is not readily or very easy to navigate through and to find information. And that's the exact reason why the President has advanced a reform proposal that would introduce a number of changes, including purpose-based votes. So on the question of infrastructure, in the 2017-18 main estimates, there's more than $7 billion in infrastructure spending, $3.2 billion of that for public transit and green infrastructure, $1.3 billion for federal infrastructure across 27 organizations, $1.2 billion for social infrastructure across 12 organizations, and $1.2 billion for the post-secondary institution strategic infrastructure fund. The challenge here, Mr. McCauley, is that the money is dispersed across so many different organizations, and one of the tools that we're advancing and trying to promote is InfoBase. The idea with InfoBase is that you can tag infrastructure, ask a question like you could in Google, and it will present to you all of the spending of government departments for that tag, whether it's infrastructure or youth or senior citizens. So again, I agree with the PBO that the format of the main estimates does not lend itself to easy scrutiny.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCauley. Time's up. Mr. Weir, for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. I want to ask Mr. Borby about nonpartisanship in the civil service, specifically striking a balance between that and the right of public servants as citizens to participate in the political process. And I'm thinking in particular of the case of Emily Taman, a federal prosecutor who was denied the right to run in the 2015 federal election. She did run and lost her job over it. Earlier this year, the Federal Court of Appeal ruled that the Public Service Commission had been wrong to prevent her from running. I'm just wondering, in the wake of that decision, what are your plans to strike a more appropriate balance between nonpartisanship of public servants, but also the right of citizens to participate in the political process?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. This is clearly a complex issue, and I have been briefed on the decision. I'm still getting my head around the decision. I think that at the end of the day, the judge was not convinced that we had articulated sufficiently well the reasons why we felt that the candidate, the public servant who wanted to be a candidate, would not be able to exercise her functions in a fair and impartial way if she was to return. So I think we need to spend a bit more time understanding the decision and seeing what it means with respect to future cases that may come to our attention. There were a number of cases and permission granted for running in the last number of elections, whether it's federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal, and I note that two former public servants were actually elected. So clearly, in many cases, the decision that was made at the end of the day was a positive decision. This case is complex, and I will have to spend more time thinking it through and understanding what the implications may be for future consideration.
So in Taman's case, is your sense that the Public Service Commission made the wrong decision, or just that it provided insufficient explanation for what you still believe to have been the correct decision?
What all I can do is basically look at what the judge concluded, which that there wasn't sufficient evidence in, I can't remember his or her mind, to be able to determine that the commission had made the right decision. So, again, I need to get a little bit more information on the case before I fully understand its implications and how we move forward from there.
Okay. I'd asked Minister Bryson what I thought was a relatively straightforward question about whether he could provide a breakdown of the $140 million that the government intends to use to fix the Phoenix pay system. I'd just like to ask officials whether it would be possible to provide a breakdown of that figure to this committee within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. So I think there's two parts to your request. There was money that was presented for parliamentary approval last fiscal year in the supplementary estimates B. The number in my head is about $50 million to PSPC. Yep. We can go back to PSPC and have them break that out by personnel.
I'm more interested
IT.
in the other 90 million. Yeah.
So for the future, my understanding that's not in the main estimates yet, and will be presented to Parliament probably through the supplementary estimates B. The minister alluded to the ministerial committee that is developing plans and is planning to bring back extra compensation advisors and make investments in training and systems. So those plans are being finalized. They'll be presented in Subs B, and we will provide a breakdown by personnel, by training, by IT investments once that's available.
So if the process isn't really finalized in terms of adding things up, where did this figure of 140 million come from? I mean, is it just multiplying the savings of 70 million per year by 2?
Mr. Whelan, I'm not familiar with your the number of 140 that's being referenced. My understanding is that discussions are ongoing.
Okay. I mean, it's the number the government put forward when it announced this task force on Phoenix.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the number. What I can provide to you is a breakdown of the funds that have already been advanced and the funds that will be presented to Parliament broken out by those areas.
Okay, I appreciate that. I would like to just stick with the Treasury Board and specifically its role as the employer of federal workers, and I want to ask in particular about Bill C7, which tries to give members of the RCMP the ability to unionize and bargain collectively. Our Parliament passed that bill quite a long time ago, and indeed the Senate came back with amendments in June. So I'm wondering why it took the government 11 months to come up with a response to those amendments.
Mr. Rowland, thank you for the question. That's it's really a policy question rather than a program, and I really can't speak to that. Discussions have been ongoing at the cabinet level, and I understand announcements were made last week in terms of the government's intention to proceed, but I can't speak to policy.
Okay, no problem. Just on infrastructure, a major component of that was funding for public transit, and it's being divided up between provinces on the basis of 70% existing ridership versus 30% population. Now that certainly gives a lot of money to the large metropolitan centres that already have well-developed transit systems, but it doesn't provide much money to smaller centres that are trying to improve their transit systems. So for example, Saskatchewan comprises about 3.2% of Canada's population, but our province is only going to get about 1.6% of federal transit funding. And I'm wondering if you could give us a sense of the rationale for this formula of 70% ridership versus only 30% population, given that most federal transfers are just dispersed on an equal per capita basis.
Again, Mr. Whelan, that was a policy decision of the government. In terms of the criteria and application of those, I would have to direct you to Infrastructure Canada for that.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. We go for the last round. Mr. Whelan for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. With Mr. Borbet, we heard a little bit about conflicting views on what happened with Phoenix, but one of the underlying questions that we still have is around what would motivate managerial civil servants to dismiss employees when they who are involved with the pay. So in that October 17th, 2015 layoff of a large number of people who are involved in employee pay, what sort of motivations might exist for them in the managerial compensation regime which might have encouraged that behavior, which turned out to be a bad behavior? And do you have any suspicions, or are you aware what the motivation might have been?
Madam Chair, this is not a question I'm able to answer. I don't have insights or information that I can share with the committee, so I can only say that as a manager in the public service, I took certainly responsibility for the failure, collective responsibility. We all have a responsibility to pay our employees fairly and on time and accurately. In my department, my former department, we immediately took action when we started hearing about cases where there were underpayments or overpayments, and worked with our finance folks and our HR folks and ensured that we dealt with the most difficult cases as quickly as possible. I think all departments took that responsibility to be able to react and deal with as many cases as possible. That's all I can say in terms of my experience with Phoenix.
So were you involved with any of the layoffs of the pay advisors in that period in the run-up to the 2015 election and the few months following?
No.
Mr. Pagan, in terms of, and you know, I missed your jersey, it was good, and it seems with your stubble that you started a playoff beard, and then maybe after Game 5 against the Rangers, you shaved it off, and then they won, so you started to grow it again. So glad to see that it's not a bandwagon problem here. Just following up on some of my questions to Minister Bryson when he was here in terms of the risks that were identified in the department, slow pace of implementation of the Secretariat's goals, insufficient capacity for delivery of government-wide initiatives, and limited IT capacity were three of the risks highlighted on page 8 of the departmental plan. And with respect to insufficient capacity for delivery of government-wide initiatives, can you speak to us a little bit about how Treasury Board, within the estimates, is allocating more funds for government-wide initiatives to address this risk?
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. In developing departmental plans, which accompany the main estimates and are intended to support committee review of our spending requests of Parliament. The idea here is to break out our targets by areas of responsibility, and then, as you reference here, identify any risks that may come to bear in terms of achieving these objectives. These are not necessarily real in the sense that they're going to happen. They're forecasts of what could be impediments or challenges in achieving our objectives. And so the idea is not necessarily to allocate money through the estimates to deal with those risks. It's to have an awareness and make sure that there are plans in place to mitigate risks, be it by training, the need to redeploy or reassign staff, to allow a program to deliver its objectives, to have disaster recovery plans in place so that if a system goes down or a building is closed, public servants have access to the tools or a work site.
And there are new activities, and is the department sufficiently financed through the appropriations that are being asked for to engage in these additional activities? Infobase, and we'll be able to see a project and a line item for disaster recovery planning.
In the presentation of a program or a proposal to the Minister of Finance for budget funding and then to the Treasury Board for approval and presentation in the estimates, a department will address or identify the risks to the project and will explain to Treasury Board ministers their plans to mitigate those risks. And that is part of the planning process, the contingencies that are built into the budgets provided, approved by Treasury Board and included here in the estimates process. So if your question is, do we have sufficient funding? Those questions have been asked at the Minister of Finance level by the Treasury Board ministers. They are included in the plans presented here for parliamentary approval.
Okay, thank you. This notion that, that we have a lot of new information that is now available online. The Minister did say that he would like to make a presentation to us on how all the new plans and priorities and the online information go together. But my understanding is that he's not available in the morning of June 13th to do that. So I have a motion to table before the committee that, notwithstanding the motion adopted on Thursday, May 11th, 2017, the meeting on Tuesday, June 13th, 2017, and Thursday, June 15th, 2017, be dedicated to the consideration of the changes to the Government of Canada's communications policy as it pertains to government advertising, including the consideration of the policy procedures and the role of Advertising Standards Canada. So that's just notice of that motion, and then we can consider it when it comes up next for business. And I believe that should be my time.
You got 1 minute.
Oh, I
If
still
you
have a minute.
don't
That
want
was a
to
quick
use it,
question.
that's okay too.
Yeah, no. With respect to the IT service, what's Treasury Board's role in interfacing with Shared Services Canada to deliver on the strategic plan that was tabled in October, the strategic plan for IT services 2016 to 2020? What's the interface there, and what's the oversight?
It's a two-dimensional or two-phased approach, Mr. Whalen. First of all, the Treasury Board Secretariat, within the Treasury Board Secretariat, there is an office of the Chief Information Officer who provides direction and standards, guidance on project development and IT tools across the public service, including to SSC. With respect to the go-forward plan on SSC, I think there was reference to a report, Gartner Group. The operating model of Shared Services Canada was assessed by TBS last year. We hired a independent third party to help us with this in the form of the Gardner report. That report was presented to us in January. It has recently been the subject of some deliberation at Cabinet, and there will be, looking ahead into future supplementary estimates, there will be a decision, a request for new funding and a presentation to Parliament of the authorities for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to suspend the meeting for 2 minutes and excuse the witness, and then we will go back to public to vote on the main estimates. Thank you. Committee members, we are going to go to vote on the main estimates, and so I can let you out 5 minutes early. So this is still in public. We are in public. And if you go to your page, numéro quel? Page 2, you will see the votes that our committee is supposed to vote on. So these are referred to our committee, and I would like to have unanimous consent to call the votes on the main estimates together. Do I have unanimous consent? Yes? Good. So I will read. Shall vote 1 under Canada Post Corporation, vote 1 under Canada School of Public Services, vote 1 under Canadian Intergovernmental Conference Secretariat, vote 1 under Canadian Transportation Accident Investigation and Safety Board, vote 1 and 5 under the Department of Public Works and Government Services, vote 1 under the Office of Governor General's Secretary, vote 1 under the Office of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner, vote 1 under Privy Council, vote 1 under Public Service Commission, vote 1 under Senate, vote 1 and 5 under Shared Services Canada, and votes 1, 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, and 33 under Treasury Board Secretariat Carey. Yes? Yes? Good. Shall we on division? Okay. Shall the chair report the votes of the main estimates to the House? Yes? Yes. And so the chair, I think it will be Tom's job to do. Well, that Tom will have to do. So thank you very much. And guess what? You are adjourned. Meeting